Hey guys, do you like my chair? My grandmother upholstered this chair. They didn't have enough money to buy upholstery fabric, but they lived across the street from a place that sold upholstery fabric. I think they actually were a manufacturer, and sometimes there would be scraps in the dumpster. So she made this all. And it's cool because it's a rocking chair. It's like an armchair rocking chair. Alright, let me grab my, oh, missed a call. Let me grab my exam off of here. We'll go over our exam. I was trying to get it on my iPad and I can't get it on my iPad because I don't get service in here. Alright, so this exam covers chapters 1 through 4. Okay? 1 through 4. Lots. So we're all going all the way back. So in my exam, I don't mix up the questions. Okay? I think that's just a little too confusing. So I usually have the questions kind of in the order of what chapter they come from. So I don't know if that's going to be helpful for you or not. I can remember being in school and I thought it was helpful if it was like that. So they're not usually all mixed in together. Alright, so we talked in the first chapter about, like, what is the goal of science? Like, why do we science? What is the purpose of science? Okay, so I'm pretty sure there's a big slide that has exactly what that is. Oh, you know what? I'll use my iPad so I can see what the slides were, because those ones are stored on my iPad and I can get those in here. Let me make sure. So when you're doing this, if you don't have your notes in front of you, please pause this and go get your notes. I want you to be looking at your notes while you go through this so that you have all the information that you need. Alright, purpose of everything. Okay, goal of science. Yes, it is in fairly large print on the slide. Alrighty. And we also talked about things to keep in mind it's on that same slide actually. Let me do view presenter notes. Okay, there we go. So I want you to understand some of the things that we talked about, like what are some of the limits of science, and remember that ideas change. Scientific laws are things that have been proven over and over and over again. And a theory means that it's a way of looking at things, but it's not necessarily been proven over and over again in a process that's observable and repeatable. One of the things that you need to really remember about science is that things that you can say science proves, you can only say that if it's a process that is observable and repeatable. And this is why origins can never be saying, oh yeah, we scientifically proved evolution, because it's not repeatable. It's not ever happened ever again in that way, molecules to man kind of evolution. So it's not observable. We've never seen it happen, and it's not repeatable. It's not happening now. Anyway. Alrighty. Also, we talked about scientists and the experiments with spontaneous generation, so you need to be familiar with the key players in that process. You need to know about experiments. We talked about this quite a bit, about designing experiments, and you have your control, you have your independent variable and your dependent variable, and you need to know the difference, okay? People always miss these questions. Don't be the person that misses this, okay? It's the independent variable is what we are manipulating. That is the thing that we are changing from the normal realm of things, okay? So, for example, if we're testing, we want to test, do plants grow better if you water them with coffee, okay? So, the independent variable is watering them with coffee. The dependent variable then is like what happens as a result of what you did. It depends on what you did. So that dependent variable would be like the growth of the plant, or death of the plant, depending. I don't know. I haven't ever tried that. So another extra credit. No, I'm kidding. You can't turn that in as an extra credit project. Maybe I'll do that next year. Okay. So you need to know when we're designing an experiment, what's the independent variable, what's the dependent variable, what's the control. You need to be familiar with those terms and be able to explain them. Alrighty. Also, when we talked about some of the limits of science, we discussed what happens. Science can't tell us why. And science also has no inherent morality. And we talked about, like, one of the worst human rights abuses in the United States was the years and years, decades-long experiment with syphilis, where they let a lot of people just go untreated for their syphilis just to see what would happen. That is not okay. People died, obviously, and they knew they would die. So that was very unethical. So now, because of that, we have a lot of protections set up now for people who want to run experiments. You have to go through a long legal process in order to do that. So I want you to be familiar with that experiment, what it was about, and what it was called, where it took place. They'll give you what it was called. Alrighty. Characteristics of life. Okay? This is not a dead horse, but I have beat it enough. It should be a dead horse now. Alrighty. You need to be able to fill out a thing that has to do all the characteristics of life. So if you're practicing, we kind of talked about six characteristics of life, and I want you to be able to write those out. Okay. We talked about different kinds of metabolism, anabolism versus catabolism. You need to know what they are, which one is which. You need to know about something we talked about today: autotrophs, heterotrophs. What's the difference? Okay. What is an omnivore? We did discuss that. That one is not actually written on any of your slides, but I did write it on the board, so you should know what that is. It should be in your notes. Alrighty. This actually looks like it may be mixed up a little bit. I'll have to look and see. Alrighty. Metabolism. Okay. Omnivore. Homeostasis. That's one of our characteristics of life. What is that? What is homeostasis, and why do we care about it? Okay, so you need to know what homeostasis is. Then we talked about different cellular organization levels. We talked about a group of cells that work together in the same kind of job. That's a tissue. We have different tissues working together, make cell what? So I want you to be familiar with all those levels of organization. Be able to fill out questions regarding that. Going back to chemistry, the smallest unit of matter, the basic building block of matter. You need to know this. We talked about, in chemistry, the atomic number, atomic mass. What is the atomic number and why do we care about it? What does it mean? What gives the, what part of the atom gives each element its properties? And you need to know that. Let me find this. Okay. How are atoms like toddlers? Remember we talked about the abbreviations for things? So if you have a substance like dihydrogen monoxide, that means it has 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen, right? So don't forget what that is. You need to know the different kinds of bonds. We talked about ionic bonds and covalent bonds and the hydrogen bonds. So you need to be familiar with all those and why they're important. Organic. What does the word organic mean? Right? Does it mean that it doesn't have pesticides in it? We've already talked about this. No. It doesn't mean that it was grown naturally. In this context, organic means containing at least 1 carbon. Alrighty. Talking about the different types of, so in that same chapter, chapter 2, talking about the different types of compounds, not compounds, but the different the different things. We have the carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and stuff. So, and enzymes, DNA. So, you need to be familiar with what we said about those. Remember, carbohydrates are essential to life. It doesn't just mean glucose or things or sugar, but they are basically structures that we usually will turn into sugar. Our bodies will turn into sugar. Some of them are not actually digestible, like cellulose. That's the insoluble fiber. We can't even digest it, so that doesn't turn to sugar, but it is technically a carbohydrate. So that's where you see like net carbs. If you have somebody that's trying to lose weight, so they're counting their carbs. You'll have things like carrots have a lot of carbs, but some of that's fiber that your body can't actually digest, and you just poop it out. So you don't have to count those ones because you don't use those. Okay. You need to know about enzymes. Enzymes are very important. And sorry, I lost my page here. Oh, where'd they go? Oh. Enzymes are proteins, but they have a specific different job. So you need to understand what enzymes are. We talked about water, the properties of water, cohesion, adhesion. You need to understand those and why they're important. Which one is adhesion? Which one is cohesion? You need to know. So cohesion is that usually that water likes to stick to itself. Adhesion is that it likes to stick to the sides of whatever vessel that it's in. pH. You need to be familiar with pH. Somebody always misses these two. So remember that pH of 7 is neutral. Remember, 7 is the biblical number of perfection. So distilled water, which is like the most neutral substance, is a 7. So anything that's less than 7 is acidic. Anything that's more than 7 is a base, or is basic. So bleach, drain cleaner, like lye, drain cleaner and stuff, that is basic. Acids are acidic, obviously. But either end of the spectrum will kill you if you drink it, or will eat your face off. So don't forget that. Okay, so you need to be familiar with cell theory. I think we've got into the next chapter, yeah. So pH was the last thing from chapter 2. So chapter 3, cell structure and, it says fun because it's abbreviated from function. Cell structure and fun. So you need to understand cell theory. What is cell theory and what is not. Okay, so I will go ahead and give you a heads up that this is a select the options that apply question. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. So you need to know which of these 8 things are true from cell theory and which ones are things I just made up. So I will give you a hint. Last option is donuts. Don't select that one, okay? I just couldn't think of any more options. Alright, cellular respiration, which I just talked about for half an hour. What is cellular respiration? Remember that... What are the options for this one? Let me see what the options were for that. I can't even see what the options are. Go back. Okay. So cellular respiration is the process of, what are we doing? We're turning glucose into ATP. We're turning food into energy, right? That's what cellular respiration is. Please don't forget that. Turning food into energy. Glucose into ATP. Alrighty. Then we have questions about, we have selected one answer per row, like we have in our quiz. How fun. Okay, so I have several different, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 different organelles and what they do. So you have to match the organelle with what it does. Please study this, since we had a lot of people miss these on the quiz, so let's please get that studied. I want you guys to succeed. All right. So talk about diffusion and the simple process of diffusion. That things move from higher concentration to lower concentration. So if I have a glass of iced tea and I dump sugar in it, well, let's say hot tea. It'll dissolve better. glass of hot tea and I dump sugar in it, the sugar is going to kind of stay there in the bottom of the teacup. But gradually, as it dissolves, it will move throughout all of the tea and be diffused throughout the tea as it absorbs. So as it breaks down into the solution. So it moves from the area of higher concentration toward the area of lower concentration until it's even throughout. It's always seeking to be even. Alrighty. I have a question about the different kinds of tonicity. So when we talked about like if a cell is in a solution that has more more solvents and solutes in it. So if there's hypertonic, has more solutes in it. Sorry. What happens to the cell? If the solution is hypotonic, what happens to the cell? If it is isotonic, that means the same, like isometric exercise, isotonic. If it's isotonic, what happens to it? So you need to be familiar with what those terms mean: hypertonic, isotonic, hypotonic. Again, this is one that people always get confused on. Just remember, hyper is too much. Hyper kids have too much energy. Ah! Okay? You all know one. If you don't know one, you are one. So you all know what a hyperactive kid is like. So a hypertonic solution means a solution that has too much. It has extra compared to the cell. Okay? Has too much solutes compared to the cell. Please don't miss those. Alrighty, we talk about the difference between active and passive transport. So this is one of those questions where I have two blanks, right? So I want you to read the question and try to fill in the blank in your mind before you look at the options. Because sometimes people will pick a really bad option because they were thinking about the options separate from the question. I want you to try to fill in the question in your head and then see if any of the options match what you had. If it doesn't, I don't know what to tell you, but hopefully you'll at least remember what one of them is, and then you'll find it which one. So you have to look at both the options to make sure that you've got them in the right blanks. What is the fuel of life? Donuts. Donuts are the fuel. No. Right now I'm feeling it, caffeine. Caffeine would be some really nice fuel right now. I'm not getting the caffeine right now. Soon I'll get it. What is the fuel of life? You need to know that one. Oops, I lost it. Come back. Alright. The cell is oh, there it is. If a cell is a car, then ATP is the, you know. Okay. True or false? Again, we're talking about cellular respiration and photosynthesis. I had that slide that I was saying, like, autotrophs do all this, heterotrophs do this. You know, both of them do cellular respiration. Only one of them does photosynthesis. So you need to know that. Remember what? There's a slide and it talks about where are the chloroplasts on the leaf. Well, chloroplasts is where photosynthesis takes place. Those need to be where the sunshine is. So what side of the leaf is that going to be? And you need to know the most common pigment for photosynthetic organisms. You need to know what that is. And remember, chloro means green, so chlorophyll is green. Alrighty. And then use the boxes. Okay. You need to remember when we talk about photosynthesis, what order the stages come in. So we have PS2 comes first. 2 comes first. PS1 comes second. And then the Calvin cycle. Why didn't they just rename them? I don't know. Okay. PS2 comes first. PS1, then the Calvin cycle. So you're going to label those 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Calvin cycle is the third in that one. Alrighty. Cellular respiration is a process. Oh, guess what? This is the same question as earlier, and the answers were actually listed earlier in the thing, so you'll just have to find them. Okay, what is cellular respiration? Alrighty, so we have to spend money to make money. On that slide, we have to spend glucose to get glucose. So when we're outside the cell, in the cytoplasm, before we've made it into the mitochondria, We have the process of glycolysis. How many ATP does it cost? That's the activation energy. How many ATP does it cost to get the ball rolling? Then we have the next stage of cellular respiration. What's the next stage of cellular respiration? Where does it take place? You need to be familiar with what comes when. Like, when does the Krebs cycle happen? When does the Calvin cycle happen? Is the Calvin cycle even in cellular respiration? You need to know, okay? And remember that there are a couple of stages in cellular respiration. I mean, one in particular that's not necessarily about making a lot of ATP, but it's about making other things to make ATP. So we need these other things in order to have the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain is where you get most. Remember, that one is like 34 out of our 38 ATPs that we get from the process of cellular respiration. So you need to be familiar with what steps in what order. I had a really good graphic that had it simplified for you in there. So find that one. Let me see if I can find it here. It's not chapter. Let's go to chapter 4. I just did that one today, again. So this one, if you see this on this slide here, this has a really good little graphic that has where we have our glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. Now, this is saying 36 ATP here and 32 here. There's some contested stuff about that, but use what's on my other graphics later on, because we also get 2 ATP. Undo. We also get 2 ATP from our Krebs cycle. Okay. Alrighty. Fermentation is a way that we can make what without what. Okay. So understand what fermentation is. The goal of fermentation is still to make ATP, but it's how we can make that without oxygen, right? So in order to carry out the electron transport chain and the Krebs cycle and stuff, we need tons of oxygen. If we don't have oxygen, like if we're in a state where we're like running a marathon or doing a hard workout or something, and our cells are not getting enough oxygen in order to carry out the full process, then we'll just stick with glycolysis, because that does give us a little bit of ATP. Not very much, it's not very efficient, but it gives us a little bit of ATP, so we'll do that. So you need to be familiar with like the 2 different kinds of fermentation. We have the lactic acid fermentation and the alcoholic fermentation, so you need to be familiar with that. So and we call them that because that's what they produce. One produces lactic acid, the other produces alcohol. Alrighty. Oh, bonus questions. Please put something in the bonus questions, because they don't count against you. So like if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. So even if you put donuts, it's worth a try. No, I don't think I put any with the answer with donuts. But anyway, just put something, okay? Sorry, I really need to go eat dinner. My brain is going too fast. I can't keep up with it anymore. All right. The 7 steps of the scientific method. That's something that you may have memorized when you were younger, like in the younger grades. I would probably revisit that. And if it says something like write out this 6 characteristics of life, that's not one of the bonus questions. But if it said something like that, if you can only remember 2, put 2. You'll get some credit for at least putting something. So please don't skip the bonus questions. These go on to your final points. So like I convert your percentage. So you get, I think the exams are worth 40 points each or 50 points, something like that. I have to look at the syllabus because I changed it this year. So the exams are worth so many points. When you miss a question, I do like -1 or -2, but that's minus out of 40 questions, whatever I have. So then I put that as a percentage. And then if you make like 90% on the quiz, then I give you 90% of 40 points. Okay? So if you do the bonus questions, you get a point on the final points. So they count more good than wrong questions count bad. All right, so you definitely want to do the bonus points. I mean, bonus questions, even if you can't remember. Krebs cycle, we already talked about. You need to know why. What is the point of the Krebs cycle? What are we trying to get out of the Krebs cycle? You need to know the makeup of the cell membrane. You know that. What's that phrase that I said was really fun to say? Sounds really smart when you say it. What are hydrophilic and hydrophobic? What do they mean? Why? You know, we talk about viruses in the first chapter. Like, are viruses alive? Why or why not? And so these are all things that you need to know for the test. I'm out of time because I don't want to do 2 videos in this. This is a one and done. So this is your exam review. Good luck.